This is the Chapter 12, Segment 2 outline, and Chapter 12 is all about motivation and the regulation of behavior. So we're picking up in this segment right in the middle of Section 12.2, which is all about hunger. And the first topic we're kind of in the middle in is body weight is tightly regulated by the brain in animal models and humans. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is basal metabolism. So it's the bodily processes that break down food for energy. So research has shown that the brain regulates body weight around a set point to control how efficiently we use food for energy. And when our metabolic rate is high, we are breaking down lots of molecules to provide body heat, more heat than we really need, in fact. So then the body dissipates much of that heat into the air around us by sending warm blood to the skin surface. When our metabolic rate is low, we're using less energy to keep up our temperature, and the body conserves that heat carefully, among other things, reducing how much warmth is sent to the skin surface to be lost. So, main question is, what does basal metabolism have to do with body weight? And actually, when we eat less, the brain detects the reduced intake and reduces our metabolic rate so that less food is needed to keep up our body temperature. In other words, the body becomes more efficient, using less energy for overall metabolism so that more energy is available to maintain body weight. So actually, there was a study regarding diets, and after they had a group of people, and after a week of a rich diet of 3,500 calories per day, 6 obese people were then restricted to only 450 calories per day. So this extreme restriction of food intake immediately triggered a reduction in metabolism, so the body required fewer calories to maintain body temperature. But that drop in metabolism meant that although the obese subjects had reduced their food intake by more than 86%, their body weight declined by only 8%. So extreme dieting might not work as well as people may expect. The next topic we're talking about is the brain carefully regulates sugar and fat to avoid energy shortages. So the most common form of sugar found in our body, or kind of relatively known sugar, is glucose, and it's a simple sugar used by brain and body cells for energy. In fact, glucose is the only energy source that brain cells can use. So we always must have a certain amount of glucose circulating in the blood, or we'll lose consciousness and die. So most body cells also use glucose for immediate energy, but unlike the brain, the body cells cannot use sugar unless insulin is present. So insulin is a hormone released from the pancreas to help glucose enter our body cells, so that we can use the sugar for energy. So when we eat, there are 3 different processes that trigger the release of insulin in our body so that we can make use of the glucose right away. And these processes are the sight and smell of food, especially when we're hungry, is detected by the brain, which then sends commands to the pancreas for insulin release. Then food entering the stomach and gut causes these organs to release hormones that, among other things, trigger more insulin to release, and a surge of glucose released from the food enters our blood, and that glucose also triggers more insulin release. So, for shorter term storage, if we obviously can't use all the glucose all at once, one way to have this last longer is the body converts this to glycogen, which is a more complicated molecule that is stored in the liver and the muscles. And then that's for short-term storage, but we use fats or lipids as our long-term reservoir for glucose. So then the next topic is what are the factors that control appetite? And we already talked about the hormone insulin, and hormones seem to be a big factor in controlling appetite. So hormones are chemicals released from one part of the body that enter the bloodstream and affect other parts of the body. So there was experiments where they were putting water into the mouths of rats, and they were kept wetting their mouths, but they continued to be thirsty or drink. And they found that unless they put water into the stomachs of the animals, they would not be quenched and they would continue to be drinking. Same goes for food. As long as food did enter the stomach, the animal would not stop eating. So these experiments show that neither hunger nor thirst depends on signals from the mouth, and that it's signals from the stomach that control appetite. So going back to hormones, in the case of hunger and satiety is hormonal signals from several different organs inform the brain about nutrient stores. And these various hormones come together in the arcuate nucleus. So this is a hypothalamic region that receives hormonal signals about energy stores and stimulates other brain regions to trigger either hungry or satiety. So basically, our brain calculates that if we have enough energy stores to maintain body weight and internal processes for a while, then we experience satiety. If we need to take more food to maintain energy stores and body weight, we experience hunger. Another hormone we talk about is leptin, and this is a hormone secreted by fat cells that signals the arcuate nucleus about energy stores. So leptin acts like a reporting mechanism. The more fat present in the body, the more leptin is secreted. And the interesting thing about leptin is they found in mice that if there's a found genetic defect in the gene, they don't seem to get the signal that they have enough fat, so they overeat until they become remarkably obese. The next section we talk about is there are some methods of weight loss that work for some people. So, there are 3 different ways described to help with weight loss, and it just talks about BMI real quick. It's the most prominent way of gauging body weight. BMI is the ratio of weight versus height. But some steps that people can take to control their weight is changing their lifestyle. But in fact, going back to dieting, no temporary change in eating habits result in a long-lasting reduction of body weight. So if you start a diet, you may lose weight, but if you stop the diet and go back to your old eating habits, you will regain all of that weight back. Also, there's obviously fad diets, and none of these fad diets result in lasting significant weight loss. And also, something that's troubling with fad diets is that many of them may cause further health problems. And, for example, the Atkins diet emphasizes eating lots of proteins and avoiding carbohydrates, but a high-protein diet is hard on the kidneys and may cause high cholesterol, increase blood cholesterol levels. So the most simply way to put changing lifestyle is eat less and exercise more. So smaller portions, eating breakfast, avoiding foods that are calorie dense, and instead eating low calorie, high nutrient foods, and being physically active. The next part is appetite control. So over the years, people have tried through trial and error to find medicines that reduce appetite without having harmful side effects. And there isn't much found in drugs that control appetite, but there's been experimentation with endocannabinoid receptors. So these are neurotransmitters that normally act on the receptors. They're activated by marijuana and related drugs. And this certain drug, Rimonabant, was developed to block endocannabinoid receptors and was found to suppress appetite. Unfortunately, that there's indications that the drug may increase the risk for depression and suicide. And the last part of steps to control your weight is anti-obesity surgery. So the first the two procedures the book talks about are liposuction, which is needles placed under the skin that suck out as much as 10 pounds of fat. And this method doesn't really work for long-term weight loss. And then there's bariatric surgery, which is surgery on the stomach and or intestines designed to reduce body weight. And the most common form of the surgery is to actually reduce the size of the stomach. However, this is a pretty serious surgery, so it's not often recommended to reduce body weight. Then the next topic we're talking about is eating disorders. Usually arise in adolescence and are more common in girls than boys. So first eating disorder we're talking about is anorexia nervosa, which is a condition involving obsession with body weight that leads to extreme weight loss. So as the section described, this is more common in adolescents and are more common in girls than boys. But behaviors that are common with anorexia are avoiding food, taking laxatives, over-exercising, and drinking lots of water that can lead to extreme weight loss. But this disease is very difficult to treat because they have very distorted body images. For everyone else, they can see them as emancipated, very skinny, where they still see themselves as fat. So the primary goal of immediate weight gain often requires hospitalization and close supervision. So one treatment that is found to work is family-based treatment. So it's a follow-up treatment to hospitalization that involves a family member and constant attendance that the patient eats. So the person with anorexia may be terrified to eat, and therefore they might only comply with intense social pressure. And the most common idea surrounding anorexia is that it's usually caused by a modern society's emphasis on thinness as an ideal feminine beauty standard. However, historical analysis shows that anorexia was first described in the late 1600s when feminine ideals did not emphasize thinness. And so different historical evidence and the persistence of anorexia suggests that it has deeper, more biological basis. Bulimia is another eating disorder, which is in which people of normal weight see themselves as overweight and following overeating, induce vomiting, or take laxatives to avoid weight gain. Not all people with bulimia become emancipated, but repeated vomiting or overuse of laxatives can still upset the composition of body fluids enough to be fatal. So it's still a very serious thing. And then we are just going to get into the very beginning of this next section that revolves around sexual behavior. And this type of motivation is described as libido, which is the motivation to have sex. So hormones also play a role, but less of a role in human sexual behavior, but they still have some effects in the desire to have sex. So there are several different words for the core of mating behavior in mammals, which occurs when the male penis enters the female vagina. So there's coitus, also called copulation or intromission, which is a sexual act, occurs when the male's penis enters the female vagina, which I said before. Intromission usually leads to ejaculation, which is the forceful expulsion of semen from the penis, and semen is a mixture of fluid, including sperm, that is released during ejaculation. In non-human animals, sexual behavior tends to be much the same form from one bout to another, or from one pair of animals to another. And we say when a behavior is like this, we call it stereotypes. So the species-specific unvarying form of sexual behavior in non-human animals. So, for example, if we put a female rat into a male rat's cage, he would soon try to initiate sex by mounting, and this usually always happens, and the male rat will not enter until the female rat does lordosis.